Welcome to Campfire Stories.
Welcome back to the fire, friends, for the last of our Klondike tales, and this one is my favorite, because it is a treasure story where the treasure is not gold. It happened in the gold rush town of Dawson City, but it happened in 1978, 80 years after the stampede, when a bulldozer digging a hole for a new building brought up, out of the frozen ground, a lost world that everyone thought was gone forever.
1978, Marty. So this is a modern story, but it reaches all the way back. A bulldozer in Dawson City. What did it dig up?
Film, Carol. Movies. Reels and reels of old silent films from the earliest days of the picture business, buried in the permafrost of the Yukon for nearly 50 years and preserved by the cold as perfectly as if they had been laid down yesterday. To understand how they got there, we have to go back to what Dawson City was and where it sat in the world.
All right, take me back. After the gold rush, what became of Dawson?
Well, Carol, in its heyday, Dawson was a boomtown of 40,000 souls, the Paris of the North, with electric light and opera and dance halls. And when the gold played out, most everyone left, but Dawson did not die. It settled down into a small, remote northern town at the very end of the distribution line for everything, including, once the movies came along, motion pictures. And that phrase, the end of the line, is the whole secret of our story.
The end of the line? What do you mean by that, Marty?
I mean it exactly, Carol. In those early days, a film would be printed, and copies would be shipped out to the theaters. A new picture would play in New York, then travel to smaller cities, then smaller towns, each theater passing the reels along to the next, a great slow river of film flowing outward across the continent. And Dawson City, away up in the Yukon, was the very last stop. The end of the river. The films came to Dawson, sometimes years after they were new, and there was nowhere else for them to go.
Oh, so the films arrived in Dawson, and then there was no next town to send them to. They just piled up.
They piled up, Carol. Thousands of reels over the years accumulating in Dawson because the film companies did not want them shipped back. The postage was more than the old films were worth to them, and here is the important part. Those early films were printed on nitrate stock. And nitrate film, Carol, is a dangerous thing. It is chemically unstable, it decays, and worse, it is wildly flammable. It can catch fire all on its own, and once it burns, it cannot be put out. It even burns underwater. So a great pile of old nitrate film in a small wooden town was not a treasure. It was a bomb.
Oh my. So they had thousands of these flammable reels stacking up with nowhere to go in a town built of wood. That is frightening, Marty. What on earth did they do with them?
They did what people did, Carol. Some they burned deliberately to be rid of the danger. Some were dumped in the river. And then in 1929, they found a use for a great batch of them. The town needed to fill in an old swimming pool, a disused pool that had become a bit of a hazard, to build a new hockey rink and recreation hall on top. And somebody had the practical idea to use all those hundreds of heavy film reels as landfill. They dumped over 500 reels of film into that old pool, packed dirt on top, and built the rink over it. And there the film sat, Carol, forgotten, under the ice and the frozen ground of the Yukon for 49 years.
Under a hockey rink. Marty, all those movies buried and forgotten under the skating ice. And the permafrost, the cold, it kept them.
The cold kept them, Carol, and that is the miracle at the heart of this. Nitrate film anywhere else in the world, in a warm climate, would have decayed to dust or burned away decades ago. That is why so many silent films are simply gone, lost forever. More than half of all the movies made before 1930 do not exist anymore in any form. But the permafrost of Dawson City, is a natural deep freeze. It held those buried reels in a cold, stable sleep, year after year, decade after decade, waiting.
And then in 1978, the bulldozer, somebody was digging and they hit them.
They were excavating that old site for new construction, Carol, and the machine brought up the ground, and there, tumbling out of the frozen earth, were the old film reels and boxes with the names of pictures nobody had seen in 50 years. They called in the right people, Carol, and this is where it becomes wonderful. When the experts looked, they realized that buried under a Yukon hockey rink was one of the greatest caches of lost silent film ever found. More than 500 reels. And a great many of them were the only copies left in the entire world. Films that every archive and every historian believed were gone forever, sitting perfectly preserved in the frozen ground at the end of the line.
Oh, Marty, the only copies in the world. So these were not just old movies. They were movies that had vanished from human memory, and Dawson City had been secretly keeping them safe the whole time.
The whole time, Carol. Newsreels showing faces and streets and events from a century ago that exist nowhere else. Dramas and comedies thought lost. Because a town at the end of the line was too far away to send its films back, and too practical to waste good landfill, and too cold to let anything rot. Every accident, every bit of neglect and thrift lined up over 50 years to save a piece of the world's memory that everyone else had thrown away. They carefully thawed them and shipped them out. And today those Dawson City films are preserved in the great archives of Canada and the United States. And you can watch them, Carol, ghosts from the dawn of the movies, dug out of the Yukon ice.
Marty, that gives me chills, the good kind. All those people, 100 years gone, flickering back to life because a bulldozer dug in the right spot. It is like the gold rush gave one last gift, long after the gold was gone.
That is just how I think of it, Carol. The Stampeders came to the Klondike for gold, and most of them left with nothing, and the gold itself ran out and turned back to cold dirt, as we have seen all season. But the town they built, sitting up there at the frozen end of the world, quietly saved a different kind of treasure without ever meaning to, and kept it safe in the ground for 50 years until the day it was needed. There is a lesson in that, I think. The things we bury and forget are not always lost, and the value of a thing is not always the value we first put on it. They buried those films as trash to fill a hole. They dug them up as one of the richest treasures the North ever gave. I'm Marty Shepherd.
And I'm Carol, and this has been the loveliest way to end our Klondike nights, with the frozen ghosts of Dawson City dancing again. Thank you for sitting with us all season, friends, through the gold and the ice and the fools and the heroes. Hold your people close, treasure the things the world overlooks, and come back to the fire. There are always more stories in the ground.